If you've ever looked into buying a Tudor dive watch, you've probably asked yourself this question: Black Bay or Pelagos? On one hand, you've got the Black Bay 58, classic and vintage inspired, and on the other, the Pelagos 39, a sleek titanium diver for the modern age. And both are fantastic offerings, which makes choosing between them surprisingly tough. So today, we're putting them side by side to find out which one I pick as Tudor's best dive watch. Before we dive into this, let's talk a little bit about the why. Specifically, why Tudor? Despite its long-standing affiliation with Rolex, many in the community agree that Tudor has worked long and hard to establish its own identity and succeeded in doing so. So it's inevitable that the Tudor name comes up whenever the conversation steers towards dive watches. Consider how the brand draws on a respected heritage that parallels Rolex, combined with the fact that its dive watches are well-built, well-designed, and appeal to both vintage forward and technically driven sensibilities. At a price tag that manages to stay both affordable and aspirational, and you've got a winning combination that essentially positions Tudor as an affordable luxury brand that delivers. Let's start with design, because even though these two watches both share a Tudor logo, they couldn't feel more different. The Black Bay 58 is rooted in nostalgia. It takes heavy inspiration from Tudor's dive watches during 1958, specifically the reference 7924 Big Crowd Submariner. You get a robust steel case with those gilt accents on the dial, the dome crystal, aluminum bezel insert, that radium-like lume, all little callbacks that make it feel like a watch from another era, just with modern build quality. Like most collectors, I consider the Black Bay 58 to be the gold standard for vintage adjacent watches. There's enough going on with the design language to represent a clear lineage, even if it does include quirks like a less than grippy dive bezel and faux rivets on the bracelet. The Pelagos 39, on the other hand, is more forward-looking. While not as technically driven as its larger siblings, the watch still possesses a more serious vibe compared to the Black Bay 58. It carries the same design history, taking its cues from the reference 7016 Submariner, which debuted in 1969 and marked Tudor's first use of the snowflake handset. On the surface, the Pelagos 39 might look like a one-to-one reissue, but its use of titanium as a case material and blue superluminova gives it a modern edge. It's less about heritage and more about purpose-built, value-added design. I remember a conversation where someone pointed out that the Pelagos is to the Black Bay what the Rolex Sea Dweller is to the Submariner, which I think is a pretty accurate analogy. To me, the standard Pelagos is a no-frills dive watch designed to be used as such. Compared to the rest of its family, the Pelagos 39 definitely leans ever so slightly towards generalist territory. The case size is slimmed down, the dial features a color accent, and the helium escape valve is non-existent. Some critics have argued that this compromises the original spirit of the Pelagos collection, where utility trumps all. But one could also argue that these new features are more additive than subtractive, similar to refinement by removal. Now, as much as I appreciate the vintage stylings of the Black Bay 58, I would still defer to the Pelagos 39's overall design. Personally, I've always felt that it was the more honest dive watch of the two, and the fact that the Pelagos 39 doesn't have the date aperture is just icing on the cake for me. Next, let's talk about versatility and how well each watch adapts to daily life. While both are probably some of the most versatile tool watches around, one does fare a little better than the other. The Black Bay 58 is arguably the more flexible of the two, and for a dive watch, it dresses up remarkably well. It pairs beautifully with almost anything. Metal bracelet, leather straps, rubber, it all works. On this reference, the gold tone accents and a splash of red on the bezel give it enough polish to look good in smarter settings, without disguising its diving heritage. And because it's a dive watch, the Black Bay 58 is more than prepared to handle the bumps and bruises associated with daily wear. The stainless steel case is as tough as they come, so if you lead an active lifestyle, you won't have to worry about bathing it. Plus, you can always have it refinished to a brand new state if you ever needed to look extra spiffy. The Pelagos 39, though, has a trick up its sleeve: titanium. It's incredibly light and comfortable, which makes it great for everyday wear. If you have a nickel allergy, however, do note that the case back is stainless steel. Otherwise, it's fully brushed finish and more technical design give it a sportier, slightly more casual feel. Sure, you can slap on a leather strap to give it a classier vibe, but with features like the aggressively narrowed bezel and prominent crown guards, it's less likely to dress up as well as the Black 58, but more capable if things get dicey. Bringing the discussion back to titanium, I should mention that it scratches pretty easily. The Pelagos 39 uses grade 2 or pure titanium for its case makeup, making it softer than stainless steel despite the higher tensile strength. So while you won't have to worry about actually damaging the Pelagos 39, mild wear and tear will show. The good news, such scratches will fade with time. Not to the point where they disappear entirely, but where they look more worn in. So in terms of day-to-day wear, I think the Black 58 edges ahead here. It transitions better from casual to formal, making it an easier one-watch option for most people. The only exception I feel is if your day-to-day involves diving and you actually use your watch as intended. I find that the more heavily narrowed bezel of the Pelagos 39 is far more tactile, which is a big deal if you glove up for your dives. But if it's just recreational swimming you're after, then either watch will work. Moving towards more tangible considerations, when it comes to how these watches feel on the wrist, both are excellent. The Black 58 comes in at 39mm with a relatively slim profile and balanced proportions that wear beautifully on almost any wrist size. And at 47.8mm long and 11.9mm thick, its weight feels solid but not heavy, giving it that reassuring tool-watch presence without going to bulky territory. The flat link bracelet tapers beautifully from 20mm to 16mm, with the clasp widening slightly at 18mm. This reference comes from the first generation clasp, but on newer references like the burgundy dark configuration, Tudor's T-fit clasp becomes the standard offering, which introduces a most welcome micro-adjustment feature. Unfortunately, the T-fit clasp is not backwards compatible, which means that if I wanted to enjoy tool-free micro adjustment on this older reference, I would have to buy a brand new bracelet, which would set me back by about $875. Personally, I think it's a crying shame that Tudor hasn't updated the black and blue dial references to come with the T-fit equipped bracelet installed. Meanwhile, the Pelagos 39 is noticeably lighter, given its titanium construction. The result is a watch that feels almost weightless compared to the Black 58. The case design is also more modern, shorter lugs, better curvature, and a slightly broader stance that hugs the wrist nicely. So in terms of real estate, it feels a tad bit more compact than the Black 58, even though on paper, its case dimensions are pretty similar at 39mm wide, 46.8mm long, and 11.8mm thick. Like a Black 58, the bracelet on the Pelagos 39 features a three-piece flat-link design, except that it tapers from 21mm to 16mm with an 18mm clasp. Thankfully, the Pelagos 39's bracelet arrives stock with the T-fit clasp along with a diver's extension. I do want to mention that the spare rubber strap that Tudor provides isn't exactly the most pliable, though it does integrate with the end link for a more modern aesthetic. But if you want a rubber strap that's comfortable straight out of the box, definitely check out our seated rubber straps for the Pelagos 39. Regardless, when it comes to wearability, my vote goes to the Pelagos 39. It sits better on my 6-inch wrist and it's simply more comfortable for extended wear. Most importantly, there's the T-fit clasp that really ought to be standard fare amongst tool watches in this day and age. Even though the Pelagos 39 does lose some points for its lackluster OEM rubber strap, finding an alternative thankfully isn't all that difficult. Now, this is where we split hairs, if at all. Both watches are powered by Tudor's in-house movements, the caliber MT5402 for the Black 58 and the caliber MT5400 for the Pelagos 39. Both are automatic in-house chronometers manufactured by Tudor's movement supplier Kinesi and certified by COSC, with a 70-hour power reserve and a true no-date architecture, which means no pesky ghost date position to worry about. In daily use, you won't notice much difference. Both calibers are impressively accurate and robust, with a daily range of -4 to +6 seconds per day. And because there are no exhibition case backs in play here, There's nothing to compare in terms of movement finishing. Not that there would be in point, even if you could. Tudor's movements are straight up workhorses, so there's not a whole lot of fanciness to obsess over. I'm not gonna lie, I think we're at a stalemate here. Both are equally dependable, and even if you're the kind of person who tracks deviation down to the second, either one performs beautifully. Now we get to one of the biggest deciding factors, affordability. On a bracelet, the Black Bay 58 sits at a lower price point of $4,550, making one of the best value luxury divers on the market. The Pelagos 39 comes in a little higher at $5,350, mainly because of its use of titanium and the inclusion of a spare rubber strap. It's not a huge jump, but it's just enough that you'll likely ask yourself whether the difference is perfect. If you're considering second options, this particular reference of the Black Bay 58 sells for as little as $3,000. Meanwhile, the Pelagos 39 starts around the $4,500 price point. For first-time buyers, I will say that the Black Bay 58 offers a stronger value proposition, and not just because it's cheaper. Objectively speaking, the Black Bay 58 gives the most broadly appealing combination of Tudor heritage, movement quality, wearability, and affordability for the average buyer. It's about delivering the most bang for buck across a wider spectrum. Now, here's where things get personal. If you've been keeping score, then you know that we're tied right down the middle. However, since there is a strong emotional component to watches, you can't always rely on logic to inform your choices. And the winner is the Pelagos 39. That's right, I'm sticking with the Pelagos 39, and not because I currently own one. For me, it feels like Tudor at its best today. Modern, confident, and technically refined. It captures everything that makes the brand distinct without leaning too heavily on nostalgia. It's also the one that feels most forward-looking, and that's what excites me. That's it. I completely get why so many people love the Black Bay 58. It's charming, it's beautifully proportioned, and it maintains that romantic connection to Tudor's past without entering that dangerous vintage reissue territory. Honestly, you'd be hard-pressed to find a collector who hasn't flirted with the idea of owning a Black Bay 58, present company included. So at the end of the day, both the Black Bay 58 and the Pelagos 39 are objectively great watches. They just serve slightly different purposes. As such, maybe the real answer to the Tudor's best dive watch question depends on what you value most, heritage or evolution. Either way, you're getting one of the best dive watches in the business in that price bracket. So which would you pick and why? And for those of you lucky enough to own both, what has your experience been like? Let us know in the comments, and as always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.